All right, I'm gonna do a pre-trip inspection on this school bus right here. You have 45 minutes to do a complete pre-trip inspection. All right, I'm gonna start in front of the vehicle. As I start in front of the vehicle, I want to make sure the vehicle is sitting level, not leaning from one side to the other. If it was leaning, it could be an indication that I have a flat tire or a damaged suspension. I'll look on both sides of the vehicle. Make sure there's no obstacles or obstructions on either side of the vehicle. I'll look on the ground. Make sure there are puddles on the ground indicating anything leaking from the engine oil, transmission fluid, power steering fluid, radiator, or windshield washer fluid. Make sure there was no leaks on the ground. I'll come over here. I want to check this side glass. Make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal stickers. I'll check these mirrors. Make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal stickers. This is a flat mirror, convex mirror, and a crossover mirror. Check these mirror brackets. Make sure they tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. Check this clearance light. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. As I come to the front, I want to inspect these clearance lights. I want to make sure they're tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. They're amber in the front, red in the back. Check this caution light. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. And it's also amber in color. Check this red stop light. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. Check the windshield. Make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal stickers. Check the windshield wiper blade. Make sure it's not worn excessively thin. Check the windshield wiper arm. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. And it's tightly holding the windshield wiper blade to the windshield itself. Check this turn signal. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The front headlight is tight and secure, properly mounted, and it's clean and visible. Check this tag. Make sure the tag is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. Check the stop arm. Make sure the stop arm is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. I'll check this stop light, this caution light, these mirrors, mirror bracket, windshield, windshield wiper blade, arm, turn signal, and headlight on this side as I did on that side. Because we inspected all these items on this side, we don't have to re-inspect them on this side, however you want to mention it. Okay? Now come around here. I want to inspect this clearance light on this side the same as I did on that side. I want to inspect this door. Make sure the door open and close fairly easy. Make sure the hinges are not binding. Check this glass. Make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal stickers. Okay? I want to check all these windows. Make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal stickers on these windows. Check this reflector. Make sure it's amber in color. It's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. This turn signal is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. Back behind here, if I could physically see it, these are items behind here that you can't physically see, but they still have to be inspected. I'll inspect that front frame. Make sure the frame is tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds, it's not missing any bolts. I'll check the leaf spring hangers. Make sure they're tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds, not missing any bolts. Check the leaf springs. Make sure the leaf springs not cracked, damaged, welded, repaired, shifted, or broken. Check the U-bolts. Make sure the U-bolts are tight and secure, properly mounted, and holding the leaf springs together. I'll check this front shock. Make sure the shock is tight and secure, properly mounted, make sure it's not leaking. If I can see the braking system, I'll inspect the brake hose, the brake coupling, and the brake chamber. I'll make sure they're tight and secure, properly mounted, and nothing's leaking. Next to the brake chamber is a slack adjuster. Even though you can't physically see it, you want to make sure there's no broken, loose, or missing parts. The angle between the push rod and the adjuster arm should be a little more than 90 degrees when the brakes are released. A little less than 90 degrees when the brakes are applied. The brake rod shouldn't move no more than 1 inch when pulled by hand with the brakes released. I'll check the brake drum. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds. Behind the brake drum, if I can physically see it, is the brake liner. I'll make sure it's not worn excessively thin. Now that covers the frame, the frame, the suspension, and the brake assembly. All that is taken care of. Now we walk down from the top of the tire. Check this tire, make sure it's evenly worn. It should be no less than 4/32 of tread depth. I'll never mix bias and radial tires on the front, nor would I put recap tires on the front. Okay? And it should be no less than 4/32. Check the side of the tire, make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal patches on the side of the tire. Between the tire and the rim is called the bead. I'll make sure there's no air leaking from the bead of the tire. Check this rim, make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal welds on the rim. Check the lug nuts, make sure they tighten, secure, properly mounted with no rust spots or shiny spots indicating looseness. This is an oil hub. Make sure this oil hub is tightened, secure, properly mounted, make sure it's not leaking. It also has a sight glass. If you can physically see it, you'll make sure they have adequate amount of fluid inside the sight glass itself. Check this valve stem, make sure it's tightened, secure, properly mounted, make sure it's not leaking. Check that cap, make sure the cap is on tight and make sure it's not leaking any air. Okay? I'll take a rubber mallet, strike the tire. If it bounces back to me, that's an indication that it's properly inflated. If it sinks into the tire, that's an indication that it's underinflated and you need to add air. Okay? Check this wheel guard. Make sure there's no crack damage, any illegal patches, make sure it's not missing any bolts, it's not rubbing the ground or rubbing against the tire. Underneath here, if I can physically see it, I'll also inspect the drive shaft and the exhaust system. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any parts. Right here's the storage compartment. Open the door, make sure the door open and close fairly easy. Make sure that there's no loose obstacles and the floor is not dented, damaged, or rusted through. Close that back, shut it. I'll inspect this rear reflector here the same as I did the one in the front. Back behind here, once you get back here, you cut this vehicle in half. Everything you said in the front don't apply to the rear. You have to say it all over again, even though it has the same components. All right, from the inside out, if I can see the frame, I'll make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds, not missing any bolts. The leaf spring hangers are tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds, not missing any bolts. The leaf springs are not cracked, damaged, welded, repaired, shifted, or broken. The U-bolts are tight and secure, properly mounted, tightly holding the leaf springs together. This rear shock is tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds, and not leaking. I'll check this airbag and torsion bar. Make sure the airbag is tight and secure, properly mounted, not leaking any air. And the torsion bar is tightly holding the airbag in place. Okay? If I can see the braking system, I'll check the brake hose, the brake coupling, and the brake chamber. It's tight and secure, properly mounted, nothing's leaking. Next to the brake chamber is the slack adjuster. I'll make sure it's tight and secure, no broken, loose, or missing parts. The angle between the push rod and the adjuster arm should be a little more than 90 degrees when the brakes are released, a little less than 90 degrees when the brakes are applied. The brake rod shouldn't move no more than 1 inch when pulled by hand with the brakes released. If I can see the brake drum, I'll make sure it's tight and secure, no illegal welds, not missing any parts. Behind the brake drum, if I can see it, is the brake liner. I'll make sure it's not worn excessively thin. Okay? That covers the braking system. All right, the tires. I'll check these tires. I'll make sure they're evenly worn. It should be no less than 230 seconds of tread depth. Okay? Check the side of the tire. Make sure there's no crack, damage, any illegal patches or bubbles on the side of the tire. Check the bead. Make sure that there's no air leaking from the bead of the tire. Check the rim. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds. Check the lug nuts. Make sure they're tight and secure, no rust spots or shiny spots indicating looseness. This axle hub. The axle hub is tight and secure, properly mounted, not leaking any grease. Okay? The valve stem is tight and secure, properly mounted, not leaking any air. The cap is on tight and not leaking any air. Okay? This is what they call bunt rims. The purpose of bunt rims is indicate that I have at least 4 inches of space between dual wheels in the rear so they're not rubbing together. Some vehicles are equipped with spacers. If it had a spacer, I'll make sure it was centered between both rear wheels and it wasn't dented, damaged, or rusted through. Make sure that there's no debris between both rear wheels and everything is tight and secure. I'll take a rubber mallet, strike the tire. If it bounces back to me, that's an indication it's properly inflated. If it sinks into the tire, that's an indication that it's underinflated and I need to add air. I'll check this wheel guard. I'll make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted. Make sure it's not rubbing the ground or rubbing against the tire. Okay? Back here is a wheelchair lift. I open this wheelchair. When I unlatch this door, this light right here will come on. I'll make sure the door open and close fairly easy. The proper way of operating this wheelchair lift if the vehicle was in neutral, parking brake was on, the wheelchair lift was engaged, I'll use these switches right here to bring the lift gate down. Bring it out, bring it down, raise it back up, and fold it back in. Shut this door. When I latch the door, make sure that light goes out. This right here is my clearance light in the rear. Make sure it's red in the rear. It's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The rear reflector is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. Back here, my rear clearance lights, they're red in the front, they're red in the back, amber in the front. They're tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. My caution lights in the rear are tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The emergency stop light is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. This window is not cracked, damaged, or any illegal stickers. The stop light or the brake light is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The turn signal is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The tag light is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The reverse light is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The rear reflector is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. I'll check this stop light, this caution light, this rear glass, turn signal, brake light, reverse light, tag light, and reflector on this side, the same as I did on that side there. I'll check this tag, make sure the tag is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws, and the stickers are legal and up to date. Check this rear exhaust, make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted without excessive carbon soot. This right here is the emergency exit door. I'll open this door, make sure it opens and closes fairly easy, make sure that the hinges are not binding. Latch it in place. I'll check this rear reflector the same as I did on the other side. I'll check these windows the same as I did on the other side. I'll check the caution lights on this side the same as I did on the other side. This right here is my fuel tank. I'll make sure the door open and close fairly easy. I'll check the caps, straps, and hoses. I'll make sure everything is tight and secure, properly mounted, nothing's leaking. Make sure that cap is on tight. Put it back, latch it back in place. Look on the ground, make sure there are puddles on the ground indicating anything leaking from the fuel tank. Now, anything that I inspected on the other side of the vehicle, I don't have to re-inspect on this side of the vehicle, however I want to mention it. Like for instance, I want to inspect the frame, the suspension, the brake, tire, and wheel assembly on this side as I did on that side, along with the mud flap. You don't have to go into depth like you did on the other side. I'll check this reflector on this side as I did on that side. Over here is my battery box. I'll make sure the door open and close fairly easy. I'll check the battery terminal, the battery post, the battery hold down. Everything is tight and secure, properly mounted, and I'll make sure that there's no excessive corrosion around the post itself. Same thing in the front. I'll check the front frame, suspension, brake, tire, wheel assembly, and mud flap on this side as I did on that side. I'll check this turn signal on this side as I did on that side. I'll check the stop sign, make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any parts. Right here, if I could physically see it, this is the steering system. The items that I would inspect back here include the steering rod, the steering box, the hose and coupling, the pitman arm, the nut and the carter pin, the drag link, knuckle nut, carter pin, and tie rod. I'll make sure everything is tight and secure, properly mounted, and nothing's leaking. All right, for the most part, the only thing I really did was made a circle around the outside of the bus. This is pretty much where I started, and this is where I end my outside inspection before we go into the inside. But before we do that, we're going to get the engine components out here that we can physically see. This right here is the radiator. I'll make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, make sure it's not leaking any fluids. This is the radiator cap. It's tight and secure, properly mounted, and it's not leaking. I'll never open this cap while the engine is hot. Okay? This is the air filter gauge. This right here tells me if I have excessive amount of dirt inside the filter itself. Behind the radiator, if I can physically see it, is the fan. I'll make sure there's no broken, loose, or missing parts, and everything is tight and secure and properly mounted. Okay? From there, we go inside the vehicle. All right, as we go inside the vehicle, I want to check these steps. Make sure that there's no obstacles or debris on the steps that could possibly trip a student up. Okay. I'll check these handrails. Make sure the handrails are tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. Okay. All right, as I walk up here, I want to inspect this. This is the first aid kit. I want to make sure it's fully stocked and it's properly mounted. This right here is what they call a body fluid kit. I'll make sure it's fully stocked and it's properly mounted. This is my BC fire extinguisher. It's tight and secure, properly mounted, and it's fully charged. I know it's fully charged because the indicator is in the green. Right here is my 3 triangle reflectors. I'll make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted here. This vehicle is also equipped with circuit breakers. If it didn't have circuit breakers, I'll make sure I had spare fuses. Okay. Some vehicles are equipped with a standy line. If I had a standy line, it would be located right here. I will make sure it's at least 2 inches in width and it's visible and clear. I'll inspect the seat. Make sure the seat is properly mounted to the frame and the frame is properly mounted to the floor. I'll inspect the seat belt. Make sure it snaps in place and it's tight and secure. I would inspect all these seats and seat belts the same as I did this one here. Okay. As I walk back, I'll make sure the aisle is clean and visible with no obstacles or obstructions that could trip someone up. I'll check this wheelchair lift from the inside. Make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, make sure it's not missing any parts. Okay? If this key was on, I open this rear door. When I open the door, a buzzer will go off. When I shut the door, the buzzer would be disengaged. Okay? I'll check these interior lights, make sure they're not cracked or damaged. This is an emergency exit. The proper way of operating this is to push it straight up and push it out and latch it in place. Okay? As I walk back down here, I would inspect this emergency exit the same as I did that one. Same way. Push it out, push it up, push it out, and latch it. All right. This is my engine compartment. Open this compartment. Okay, underneath the engine, it has a power steering reservoir. I'll make sure this power steering reservoir is tight and secure, properly mounted, make sure it's not leaking. It also have a dipstick. The proper way of checking the dipstick is to pull it out, wipe it clean, stick it back in there, pull it back out, and make sure it's above the add mark. I have a transmission dipstick. The proper way of checking that is with the vehicle running in neutral. Pull the dipstick out, wipe it clean, stick it back in there, pull it back out, make sure it's above the add mark. I have an oil dipstick. The proper way of checking that is to pull it out, wipe it clean, stick it back in there, pull it back out, and make sure it's above the add mark. Now, this is not something you physically have to do. You just have to explain to the instructor this is what you would do. I'll also check all these hoses, couplings, and wires. Make sure everything is tight and secure, properly mounted. Make sure nothing's leaking. Make sure the wires are not frayed. Up here, if I could physically see it, is an air compressor. I'll make sure the air compressor is tight and secure, properly mounted. Make sure it's not leaking any fluid. I also want to let you know that the air compressor and the power steering are gear driven. This is my oil cap right here. This is where I add my engine oil. I'll make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted. Make sure it's not leaking. On this side, if I could physically see it, up front is the alternator. I'll make sure the alternator is tight and secure, properly mounted. Make sure the wires coming from the alternator is tight and secure and properly mounted, not cracked or frayed. Underneath the alternator, if I can physically see it, is the water pump. I'll make sure the water pump is tight and secure, properly mounted. Make sure it's not leaking. I also want to let you know that the alternator and the water pump are belt driven. If I can see that belt, I'll make sure it's nice and snug, no more than 3/4 inch clear in the center of the belt, and the belt is not cracked or frayed. At that point, I shut this down, latch it back in place. As I come to the driving position, I want to check this seat, this driver's seat. I want to make sure it's properly mounted to the frame and the frame is properly mounted to the floor. As I sit in the seat, first thing I want to do is check the seat belt. Make sure the seat belt is not cracked or frayed, and make sure it snaps in place. It's tight and secure. Okay. On this side, I want to check these mirrors on this side. Make sure they're properly adjusted to me. I'll check this front windshield. Make sure there's no crack damage or any illegal stickers. I'll check that windshield and that mirror on that side the same as I did on this side. I'll check this overhead mirror or the passenger mirror. Make sure there's no crack damage. I can see my passengers and my passengers can see me. At this point, I'm gonna drop down. I'm gonna start the vehicle up. This is rough. I'm gonna start the vehicle up. Okay, as I start the vehicle up, I'm gonna check these interior lights. Make sure that these interior lights come on. Okay. I want to check my rear heater. Make sure that the rear heater works correctly. Open and close this door. Make sure the door open and close fairly easy. I want to check the windshield wipers on the passenger side and the windshield wipers on the driver's side. Make sure both of those are working correctly. As I go across the dash, I want to check my gauges. I want to start with the fuel gauge. Make sure I have adequate amount of fuel in the vehicle itself. Check the oil pressure gauge. Make sure it's working correctly, rising to a normal level. You don't have to give them a number, just tell them it's rising to the proper level. Check the air pressure gauge. Make sure that's working correctly, rising to a normal level. Check the temperature gauge. Make sure it's working correctly, rising to a normal level. Check the voltmeter. Make sure that the voltmeter is indicating the alternator is charging the battery. From that point, I want to check my caution lights. These are my student caution lights. Make sure that they're working. As I open this door, make sure that the emergency lights are working. Check it back. Down below, I want to check the heater and defrost. Make sure that they're working correctly. Check the front headlights. Make sure that the front headlight indicators are on the dash and up here. Check the left turn signal, make sure it's working up here, make sure it's working down here on the dash. The right turn signal is working up here and it's working down here on the dash. Check the four-way flashers, they're working down here and they're working up there on the dash. At that point, I put my hand on the steering wheel. I rock this steering wheel back and forth. I should have no more than 2 inches or 10 degrees of play in the wheel before the wheels start to turn. Okay. Check this horn. Make sure the horn is working correctly. At this point, the vehicle is in neutral, parking brake is on. I put it down in drive, I accelerate, make sure that that parking brake is holding. I put it in reverse, accelerate, make sure that the parking brake is holding. Put it back in neutral. Now to do a service brake test, I'm going to put my foot on the service brake and push the parking brake in. Put it down in drive to make sure the vehicle won't roll. Put it in reverse, make sure the vehicle won't roll. Put it back in neutral, pull the parking brake out. Now I want to start the air brake test. To do the air brake test, you got to walk through everything that you're doing. You want to tell the instructor that you want the rear wheels chalk. There'll be a chalk behind the rear wheel so the vehicle won't roll. You want to make sure your air pressure gauge is reading between 100 and 120 psi. Then I'll turn this vehicle off. I'll turn the key to the on position. I'll push the parking brake in and I'll hold the service brake down. I'm going to hold it down for 1 minute. I want to make sure I don't lose no more than 3 pounds of pressure in 1 minute. Once that minute is up, I'm going to fan the brake. As I fan the brake, my air pressure will drop down. It drops down to 60 psi, a warning light and a warning buzzer will come on. I'll continue to fan the brake until the parking brake pop out between 20 and 40 psi. Okay? Now that you told them that and you've gotten that out the way, the only thing you have to do now is demonstrate it. Okay, rear wheels are chalk, the air pressure gauge is at 120 psi. I'm going to turn the vehicle off, turn the key to the on position. Push the parking brake in, and I'm going to hold the service brake down. And I'm going to hold it down for 1 minute. At this point, I'll ask the instructor to time me for 1 minute. And I'm also looking at this gauge right here, making sure I'm not losing no more than 3 pounds of pressure in 1 minute. And after my minute is up, I'll fan the brake. As I fan the brake, the air pressure will drop down to 60 psi. The warning light, warning buzzer will come on. I'll continue to fan the brake until the parking brake pop out between 20 and 40 psi. Okay, now that my minute is up, my fan. As I fan down, okay, at 60 psi, that warning light and that warning buzzer is on. I'll continue to fan until this parking brake pop out at 40 to 20 psi. Once that pop out, that indicates that my air brakes are working. At this point, I'm going to start the vehicle back up. I'm going to allow my air pressure to build back up. Once it builds up above 60 psi, that warning light and warning buzzer will go off. I'll continue to build it back up to the normal operating range, which is between 100 and 120 psi. Alright, at this point, while you're waiting on your air pressure to build up, you take a moment, look around, think if there's anything that you may have missed, you could always go back and get it. If you think you got everything, you can either push this button right here, which is a fast idle button, to help your air pressure build up faster. Or what I like to do is cancel the fast idle and build it up by pressing my foot on the gas. Okay, my air pressure has built up above 60 psi, so that warning light and that warning buzzer has gone off. I'll continue to build the air pressure back up between 100 and 120 psi. You know the tanks are full, you'll hear a sound and go off that indicates that the air tanks are full. Can't use both of these at the same time. You can't use the fast idle and the gas acceleration at the same time to build the air pressure up. It has to be one or the other. Okay, that sound right there, that's an indication that the air tanks are full and your air pressure is at 120 psi. At that point, I'll let the instructor know that that concludes my air brake test. So now, I'm going to turn the vehicle off, and the only thing left to do now is an external light check. We check the lights on the dash and on the inside to make sure that they're working correctly. Now we will get the instructor to assist us in checking them in the rear. And the only thing you do while you sit here, you'll turn the key on the on position, turn the front headlights on, and the instructor will give you an indicator that the front headlights are working. Put the high beams on, they'll give you an indication that the high beams are working. Turn the left turn signal on, they'll give you an indication that it's working on the outside. The right turn signal, they'll give you an indication that it's working on the outside. Okay. These caution lights, they'll also point to them and they'll give you an indication that they're working. Open that door, they turn into the emergency stop lights. They'll give you an indication that they're working. Once you shut the door, those lights go off. The instructor will walk to the back, stand in your side view mirror and give you instructions on the back lights. They'll check the left turn signal and they'll give you an indication that it's working. The right turn signal, they'll give you an indication that it's working. The four-way flashers, they'll give you an indication that they're working. You put your foot on the brake for the stop brakes and they'll give you an indication that they're working. Put the vehicle in reverse, They're listening for the sound and they're making sure that the lights are working in the back. Activate these lights right here again in the back, the caution lights. Open the door. They'll turn into the emergency lights. At that point, that pretty much concludes your exam. The instructor will come inside the bus and they're waiting on you to tell them that that concludes your pre-trip inspection. So at that point, when the instructor get in, you would tell them that that concludes my pre-trip inspection. So that's it.